recorded. All right. Welcome to Coffee with a Purpose, everyone, on this nice sunny Monday morning. And we're welcoming Kate and Kathy from Spark Hope Scar Revision Project for a return visit. Some or most of you may recall they visited us in April, I believe, of this year to tell us about their organization, but also kind of had, great plans for what was hopefully going to be happening over the remainder of the year. And we're looking forward to coming back and seeing us again and sharing their progress and maybe, as we did last time, sharing some good feedback for them as to, how ideas we might have for their organization as well. I'm not sure whether we've got exactly the same people this time as last, so let's do our introductions again, if that's okay. Never hurts to repeat. So, Martin, let's start with you.
Yeah, Martin Kessel, longtime Natick resident and town meeting member.
Thanks. Paul?
Paul Carew, also a longtime Natick resident. I came to Natick at 5 years old. Very active in the veterans community in Natick. I'm the director of veteran services for the town, responsible for events around town involving veterans.
Thanks, Paul. Sally?
Sally Hopkins, not too long a Natick person, but happily, it's almost 10 years. And Pat Conaway's sister and his lead of his fan club.
Thanks. Tom?
Yeah, Tom Daly, a 35-year resident of Natick, member of Spark Kindness and former town meeting member, and welcome.
Thanks, Tom. Cindy?
Morning. Welcome back, you guys. I am a singer in Sound and Spirit, which is my connection to Kate and Kathy, and also from yoga. And I am a trail steward, a 5-year resident of Natick, and Keep Natick Beautiful picker-upper.
Thanks, Cindy. Alan?
Hi, I'm Alan Cantor. I've known about Coffee with a Purpose for many years and finally got here. I've been living in Natick since May. It's been great.
Great. Great to have you, Alan. Brinley? Brinley? Maybe she's... Oh,
Hey,
there you go.
sorry. Yep, sorry. Brinley, been here about 25 years, also a town meeting member. Remember you guys from being here last time. Grateful for your work and looking forward to the update. Thanks for coming back.
Great. And I'm Doug, moderate this group and longtime Natick resident. Do a lot of volunteer work with the First Congregational Church downtown and all of their great mission activities. So Kate and Kathy, welcome. We'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. Hi, folks. So I've been here 28 years, 28 years. And let's see, lots of familiar faces. So thanks for having us back. I apologize. We're hanging out in my son's room because I went down this morning and I forgot that somebody was coming to fix the ceiling in our office. So we're hiding out in this room. But thanks for having us back. And not sure, like Doug said, if everybody was here when we were here before. So maybe I'll just quickly kind of explain what we do, and then I'll give you
that would be great.
Great. So
a refresher.
We're called Spark Hope Scar Revision Project, and we connect people who are struggling with self-injury or scars from interpersonal violence to free scar revision and a fresh start. And we do that by connecting these two beautiful things that we know work but have never been connected. This is so interesting. So we know in these situations that mental health treatment is essential. And we also know that in the world of scars, that scar revision is advancing so quickly, and we connect these things. And that's the curious thing, that they've never been connected. And so we become a resource for therapists. And what our therapists tell us is that infusing the hope of scar revision into therapy leads to better outcomes. And that's really sort of been fascinating for us to learn along the way. And we've, even since April, we've learned a ton. I can tell you that this was born of my daughter's experience. I have 4 children. We're a family through adoption, and it's my youngest who struggles. At the age of 13, she suffered a terrible assault, the kind that fractures a person in two, that no one should have to endure. And she didn't feel comfortable at that time, which is the real heartbreak for me, that she could share it. She was so embarrassed and traumatized, and almost immediately we went into the isolation of COVID, which made things 1,000 times worse for a kid like this. Exposure to things on the internet, which was basically a how-to for kids who were struggling. And this is called a maladaptive coping mechanism, but it is an effective coping mechanism, which I don't say widely because it is a social contagion. So if you are young and vulnerable, or you're vulnerable, it doesn't only happen to youth. It is the way this thing has just taken off. And we work with an organization that's called the International Society for the Study of Self-Injury, and they put a study out this year. We've been working with them for a couple years, but a 2025 study that said that between the ages of 12 and 22, that 30 to 35% of those folks are engaging in self-injury. And that number, they thought it would come down post-COVID. It has not. And that tells you the state of our kids. And we know, if you've read that great book, Jonathan Haidt's Anxious Generation, they are an anxious generation, and still they're going to have to inherit the earth at some point. So this is our small effort to help them catch up, and the work has been just amazing. Some wonderful participant, one of our participants, had said that for her, Spark Hope Scar Vision Project, not to be mixed up with Spark Kindness, although we love them as well, that having her scars revised through lasers broke the cycle of despair. So she would look every morning at these scars on her arm, and she would remember, that would remind her of the impulse to self-injure, and that would take her back to the trauma that had happened in her life that had her engaging in this form of coping mechanism. So it's an amazing mission. It is not based on genius. It's something that we stumbled into because of my lived experience, and this opportunity to connect these two things was because it just happened to I sort of stumbled into it with my daughter. So we have pilots or projects that are running in Massachusetts and New Hampshire. We are poised, once we get to funding, to wherever this technology exists. We know the cycle of despair exists in these communities. And we have a bunch of exciting updates to kind of give you since April. We've assembled our board, and I'll talk a little bit more about that, but the board is just astonishing. We have survived for 3 years with a very small board, because I don't know if anyone here has created a nonprofit, but once you have a board, you have a board. You have to maintain a board, and it's a whole nother job. But we were finally ready to assemble a big board, and we did that, and that was fantastic. And I'll give you more information on that in a minute. We've taken a lot of speaking engagements, which has really been incredibly helpful. We've learned, for example, when we talk to therapeutic associations, for example, we were just up in Vermont talking to the New England and the New York Collegiate Health Associates. And what we hear from them is that they do not feel like unilaterally that they do therapy for self-injury well. It tends to be one of the hardest topics to talk about. There's so much shame and stigma attached to it that it takes a long time to build the trust to talk about this. And with the tools that we have created, which is wonderful feedback, they feel like they can get into this conversation a little bit faster and a little bit deeper. And attached to it is the hope of scar revision. And that is, it's a game changer. And they're asking for forums. They want to talk to other people who do this well. And the folks who do this work well, scars, dealing with folks who are coping with scars from domestic violence or people who have been self-injuring, they tend to be in recovery sites, or they tend to be in emergency settings or attachment institutes. And if you think about a therapist job, they have to study everything. So very few of them have a specialty in this area. So we hear from them, they want better language, they want to know, what are techniques that work, and they want the resources that we're beginning to craft. And that's exciting. That's another thing that we've learned from the scar vision providers, dermatologists, plastic surgeons, etc. They want to know the protocols. So you have doctors who have the lasers and they have a certain level of expertise, but for the most part, the dermatologists, they don't know, or they don't think they know how to deal with scars. And certainly when you're dealing with scars that have a trauma attached to it of this sort, they just sort of back away. We were out with the dermatology nurse practitioners in California, and that was really fascinating. What amazing people who are doing really great work. But many, many of them told us they're afraid of these scars. We had one young woman who was delightful, who said, "Oh my gosh, I see these scars all the time when kids come into their appointments, or people come into their appointments, I should say, because it's not just young people." And she said, "And I never say anything."
Hmm.
And of course, I didn't want to shame her, and I didn't. But saying nothing actually confirms for them that these are indeed shameful.
Hmm.
Because those people know, when they have gone in for dermatology and their skin is exposed, they know that a dermatologist knows what these are. So what we hear from those folks is that they also want better language on how do you make a person feel safe. And also, how do they make these scars better? So what we're asking of our doctors who are on our board is to create protocols. So if you have a CO2 laser, this is what you do. If you're the next tier down and maybe you have an IPL, I'm going to say things that you might not know, but these, a lesser laser, this is what you do. Or if you run a med spa and all you have is a microneedling pen, this is the protocol you follow if you have a microneedling pen. So that's
Hey, could I interrupt you just for a second? The protocol for what? That I'm
the
missing.
medical protocol
Okay.
for using whatever tools you have
Yeah.
to improve a scar.
Okay.
And so what we hear from the scar vision providers is they want to know how to treat the scar, and also how do they do that when it's attached to a trauma. So
Okay. Gotcha.
that's what we've learned from that experience. And then, we can talk about a couple other things that we've learned, but we are at the stage of development now where it's really about the funding, which is never a fun thing to talk about. It's the part of our work that is going to allow us to be all over the country. There's a big international need for this. We're in discussion now to go to Sweden. The International Society for the Study of Self-Injury has a big conference, and now because of our board, we have even more of an opportunity to be a presence there. So we've got to figure out how do we get the funding so that we can speak there. But it's been quite a journey. I just want to back up for a minute and tell you about our board, if I may. So the board is the most amazing assembly of people. We constantly pinch each other. Like, I can't believe that we've been able to attract like these remarkable people. So we have Dr. Rox Anderson on our board, and he's the gentleman who created all scar vision lasers. He also created tattoo removal, hair removal. I mean, he's just an extraordinary genius who's brilliance is only maybe matched by his like great humanitarian heart. And so he's from the Scar Vision side. We also have this woman, Dr. Elizabeth Lloyd Richardson, and she's at the forefront of all of the research and the new literature that's coming out about self-injury. And she jumped right on board with us. She's been an amazing collaborator.
She didn't realize she was a collaborator from the beginning.
Well, you want to tell that story?
No,
So it was a real thrill for us to finally talk to her, because we said, well, what you don't realize is that we've read all of your literature, and right from the beginning, it's guided our efforts. And so she was very, I think, touched by that, but also she's looking for this is totally new and innovative. Nobody's ever talked about revising scars. And also that's something we have to be very careful about. You can't just take somebody's scar away and not deal with the deeper scars on the inside. And that's why these things have to match. But I mean, we have a gentleman who's also a Harvard doc who's now in the world of insurance. So he's going to help us figure out how to run our protocols, but also how do we eventually get insurance to cover this? Because these are, of course, not like right now, this would be considered like an aesthetic need, as opposed to, oh, this is a scar that's attached to a mental health issue.
Right.
So we have a great psychiatrist who's at Children's Hospital. She's also got an MBA, so she's unbelievably smart, which we need.
I don't want to have you go out of turn, but that Swedish Association of, I've forgotten the full name. Do they have I'm stumbling over the question. Are they farther advanced than us, maybe as a country or something, understanding the linkage between the emotional cost of that scar and the physical manifestation of it?
That's the work that they do. They study it, and they create therapeutic protocols. But I think that they also recognize the innovation of that. And I say that in total humility. This is not based, I'm not a genius like Dr. Anderson is, who created the lasers. I'm just a person whose kid went through this. And I happen to have this woman who, her name's Elizabeth Glynn, who works at a med spa, who had lasers for facials. And she was willing to, revise my kid's scars with her lasers. And that's how we stumbled into it. But there's just the most amazing group of board members. So that's really significant for us, because they will help us with the fundraising, but also they'll help us think through, how do you take this and scale it? Because our process is pretty streamlined. But that's sort of our work, is like, how do we get the funding of it? And we sort of know how to take it and put it into little bite size to get that information out, both to therapists and to scar vision providers. But it's like the next, so we've got the scaffolding in place, and how do you start to build, the structure?
Cindy, I had seen your hand up earlier, I think, but then you lowered it. Did you have a question?
Yeah, I do. Now I have two. Like the first question, the second question I'll do first. How many people on your board?
We have, we have 9, plus me.
Okay.
But I'm holding the spot, because I'll always attend these.
Yes.
But I think eventually I shouldn't be the chair. I'm currently de facto chair, because I hold so much of the knowledge, but eventually that's what now we're in the process of figuring out who could function as maybe a co-chair. And we probably need somebody in the world of finance to come on board. So I'd say we have a beautiful board, and still we need that person who's going to figure out, like, how do you pay for this thing?
Thank you. And then the question that I did have is, you talked about the doctors, or one doctor making up the protocol for different kinds of lasers. And is that protocol, or is that somebody else's task to write a protocol for the language that those doctors might use?
So we have two doctors. We have Dr. Anderson, and then we have Dr. Yakir Levin, who is kind of his protege. And there are other people around the country who have expressed interest. We've so far kind of held them off because we know there's a great opportunity for research. But we also want to make sure that we're ready for this, that we are HIPAA compliant, that we're protecting the people that we want to, we're serving. But right now that would be those two docs.
Okay.
And, Dr. Anderson has hundreds, maybe thousands of people that he's trained, but he'll probably use his residents to also help him craft that language, but also the medical.
So it's both. That was
both.
Yeah. Okay. Because you did such a good job. I mean, I was so impressed by when you said you came back and the doctors were just clamoring for help with how do I not ignore it but not make it worse or whatever.
And they want to help.
Yeah.
That's the other piece that we get from it. Like there's just so many people out there in the world.
Exactly.
Want to help.
Well, we were interviewed recently. I can't remember what it was for, but they said, what's the biggest thing you've learned? And I had some like big, lofty, philosophic downer thing that I learned. And she's like, and I've learned that there are a lot of generous people in the world who want to make this better. I'm like, can I change my answer? But that is, I mean, people know that young people are suffering right now. And I say young people because that is the most active age, but it's not only young people. If you don't receive intervention, it's not for certain that you'll grow out of this stage. Many people continue to self-injure throughout their life. And curiously enough, I think the biggest age bracket we've served happens to be like 32. So that's sort of interesting.
Are there linkages between people that self-injure in why am I stumbling over my questions this morning?
That's okay. You need coffee.
There you go. Yeah, I will step away for a second to get back to my coffee machine. I'm thinking about like addictive behaviors, self-injurious actions that don't physically necessarily manifest themselves, say in a scar, but are still injurious to your mental well-being. People hurt themselves, I guess, in a lot of different ways. And I'm not sure what my question is there, other than
so I think I
maybe
know
there's some linkages of or lessons of, well, here's how we help. Here are strategies that help someone get away from bad habits in one realm of their lives. Maybe some of those same things apply to physically hurting yourself too.
So I'm going to tell you folks at Coffee with a Purpose that I feel like you folks have asked us the best questions, and they're really like nuanced questions. So what I hear you saying is the world of self-harm. And it's really important. And then we think this is part of, the educational material that we will get to, but even this year to get people understanding that many of us engage in, if you call self-harm the umbrella, self-injury is a spoke, but we're living through a massive period of anxiety, and that is often resultant in some form of self-harm. And self-harm, there's so many ways that the average person engages in self-harm. But if we come to understand that, like if we overeat, if we undereat, if we overexercise, if we overwork, I mean, there are many ways. People get into fist fights, and that's a harming behavior. But if we can connect people to understanding that, self-harm is actually not an unusual human behavior, and that self-injury, for whatever reason, it is considered this stigma, this shameful. That's literally what a stigmata is, right? It is considered, the definition of it is this wound that is attached to shame. If we stop shaming those people or othering them, and recognizing, wow, we all engage in some form of self-harm, then they're no longer marginalized. And what we hear from participants is that with Spark Hope, which is nice, but their providers in particular, they're just astonished that their providers aren't ashamed of them, that their providers treat them like any other patient, that they come in and they feel normal. And that's where we have to, like, why, and I'll tell you what else is fascinating to me. I watched it with my own kid, but we've seen this time and time again. People tell us that the default when like somebody reveals these or somebody notices them, it's not compassion, it's shame. What have you done to yourself? What are you doing? Does your mother know you're doing that? It's so weird. We're so afraid of these marks. And that shows such a lack of skill. And again, we're kind of going through a period where we don't have the skills to meet these really peculiar times that we're living through. And I think, Doug, that the work that we're going to do will absolutely have benefit beyond just scar revision. It's about getting folks more comfortable talking to other people in a compassionate way. For example, if you saw somebody with these marks, you might say, "Hey, I want you to know you're not going to get any judgment from me. You're safe. This is a safe zone." Of course, they have to make sure that you're a safe zone, and say, "I don't know what I noticed the marks on your arm, and I don't know what caused them, and I don't even need to know. But if that's something that bothers you, I think maybe I can help, or maybe if I can take you to the nurse, this is language that a kid might use. I'll go to the nurse with you." Or something just to say, I see you, I hear you, and I'm not ashamed of you. And but in general, we don't feel skilled to do that. And that's, how do we de-escalate situations? How do we infuse compassion into our response? And I believe that will be a part of the work that we do with the behavioral science experts. I'll give you an example that we went up to, went through the mental health first aid. Has anybody else done the mental health first aid training?
Amazing.
I have to tell you, Paul,
yeah, we've done it. Yeah.
is amazing. And it is what we all need to do. And we actually have been back and forth because the woman who ran the program really fell in love with our mission, and we fell in love with mental health first aid. I left that meeting. Kathy's so sick of this because I left that meeting and I was so impressed in the way they just made it totally accessible. I left there feeling like it's just like when I took, when you took first aid, now you can keep somebody's heart beating until the experts show up in an ambulance. The same is true of people who are going through a mental health crisis. And it's not that complicated. And that's the way we want our information to be handed out in these little bite-sized that make us feel more skilled, empowered, but to let compassion drive us. And that is not the response people get when you're, when they encounter self-injury. And it's just a weird fact.
So I've seen that Sally has her hand up, and Brinley had her hand up and then lowered it. I'm going to go refill my coffee while Sally's asking her question or making her comment.
Sure.
Oh, what happened to Sally? Oh, Sally, you're on mute. Got to come off mute.
I thought I had, excuse me. Kate and Kathleen, what have you experienced in not only, Kate, where you're sharing your own experience, but how did you happen to approach it with your daughter when you saw this, the little signs? Were you aware that she was covering it up, or did you just keep your eyes closely? Were you aware she was going through things that might emanate like this?
I mean, I'll tell you that I was like, what the holy hell is going on? And I knew this much about self-injury. I knew it existed. In my mind, it was kind of like, something that you read in the Bible about people renting their clothing, and I was naive, unskilled. I mean, I feel like I'm a skilled parent, but I wasn't prepared for this. And it was so weird. Like, here's my 13-year-old kid who was a monster athlete, had challenges academically that she was bumping into, but lots of friends, and she was like my little buddy. And suddenly this really peculiar behavior started, which of course was attached to this trauma that we didn't know about. Um, and so I, my, I always joke, well, it's not even a joke. I'm a librarian's daughter. So I read books. And so I read every article. I started to listen to podcasts. That's how I stumbled into, it took me a year. I at no time was I thinking, I'll start a nonprofit. I was just trying to think, how do I help this kid? And that's like all of the data and the information that I've gathered. I was just doing it because I recognized that I was not skilled enough. And I mean, at some point, if you have a person who's going through a mental health crisis,
Sure.
I'm not a therapist. And even if I were the greatest therapist of all time, I wouldn't be treating my own child. So a lot of this came from a desire to help, to become more skilled, and to just get her secure. So I at first I really thought it was a cat scratch. And then I'm like, has my cat like gone off the deep end and that my cat is scratching this kid? So eventually I was like, okay, so there's something going on. And it was her method. It was razors. But it was incredibly scary. Add the backdrop of COVID, and this was still when we were wiping off packages, and
Right.
it was terrifying. And that behavior was only part of the startling behavior that we suddenly, this massive shift in my kid who was suffering.
Did she have other peers or friends who were experiencing it too? Was there a kind of a thing that a very dear friend might be knowing another dear friend was doing the same thing?
I mean, it is absolutely a contagion, and COVID made it out of control. And that's the terrible thing, is that, because it is this peculiar coping mechanism, right? If you're trapped back here in your lizard brain, or you're trapped remembering that trauma and you can't stop thinking about it.
Yes.
That is the peculiar thing about self-injury. There are many other better coping mechanisms, but she'd heard about this one. It was all over the internet. And what it does is it takes you from your back of your brain right to the front of your brain, and it returns you to the present. And yeah,
Releases pain, right? So
it's a different sort of a pain.
Excellent. That's so insightful. Yeah.
And I think
Hey, Paul, did you want to say something? I know you have to leave.
I love your discussion. I work kind of in that field, and I'm going to buy a book today, Power versus Forces. Uh,
I haven't read it yet.
yeah.
by Hawkins, yeah.
Yeah.
And a friend of mine just read it, and he told me it's a great book, and I'm going to incorporate it hopefully into my work and my Saturday morning groups. But I love hearing your work, and it's so meaningful and important to all of us. And I take it personal because I do that work on a daily basis. So thank you very much, ladies, for the work, the fine work you do. And thank you for bringing us up to date here on Coffee with a Purpose. And I want to wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving. Sally, I hope you will tell Patrick, for me, happy Thanksgiving. Welcome home. God bless you all.
All right. Have a good Thanksgiving, Paul. Hey,
Thank you.
Paul was telling us in chat he had to leave early for a doctor's appointment. So,
Sure.
yeah. And Brinley, thanks very much, as she always does. She's been putting links to each topic, your site, the mental health first aid, this book, and so forth. So thanks for that, Brinley. Um, I did also just want to point out, or given the nature of this morning's discussions, and that we may be sharing, personal stories as well. At the moment, we're recording and have hopes of sharing the recording online. If the discussion does get too personal, certainly, folks should feel free to reach out to me. We can either make a collective decision not to post a recording or to selectively edit it. Um, the major focus is to remove any aspect of shame from all of this, but to the extent that we're relating, stories that involve others than ourselves too.
What we find helpful is just to give folks the heads up that this is going to deal with a sensitive topic, and it
Yeah.
could flood them with emotion, in which case, the trigger warning is not that I feel like this is particularly triggering, but I think it's again super astute. We do not hear that from others.
Brinley?
Impressive. Yeah, that's impressive that you guys are that thoughtful.
It's so funny. Twice now, I have a question, and then somebody starts the topic of it. The first one was just you talking about how to be helpful when you notice it. I think I remember asking that question the same time last time because my know someone who was in that position, and I wasn't sure what to say or how to say anything, or if I should say anything, or if I should say something to the parent or anything. So I do think that's wonderful that you're going to include that aspect in your work, because I do think that that's so important, that challenge of knowing what to say and how to say, and if you say. So I think that's fantastic. And then the second part of that was kind of just what Doug sort of touched on. I seem to remember last time that you actually had your daughter's permission to have these conversations with us, and I just didn't know if there was more about that, because I do think that's such a strength and such a powerful place to come from.
All these really good questions. Yes, no, she's proud of this work. She would like to someday be a part of this work, and in the discernment process, she needs to be, I think, a little further down her journey. But it is a topic that we need to get comfortable talking about, because it's happening so often. And to take away the shame, it has to be, our thought would be, you do say something, because further not saying something actually further shames. But it has to be the right environment, and it has to be the right tone. And I feel like that, like I say, say, you'll get no judgment from me. This is a judgment-free zone. And then you have to be that safe place. And I believe that so my heart is absolutely in the prevention side of it, and trying to get that information. We have to learn how to talk about this. And we're working with the Herron Project. Do you know Chris Herron? Are you folks familiar with the Herron Project? So he's the basketball player. He's done an incredible amount of work, just amazing, mind-blowing work with substance use disorders. He played at BC, had an amazing, just an incredible athlete from Fall River. He speaks all the way around the country. He played for the Celtics, had the most remarkable rookie year, like one of the greatest of all time, except he had a heroin problem, challenge. And he'll talk about this, how he would win. He'd have like an amazing game with the Celtics, and then he'd be in his uniform on the side of the road trying to score heroin. And when he finally got clean, which took many, many, many new, you talk about me reaching rock bottom, and then another level of hell and another rock bottom. But he has done all this preventative work talking to folks. And so they heard about us, and again, we're like just so astonished, and we're so honored because they want to like apply for a co-grant and create a one-pager on language. They're very compelled, like, how do we talk about this better? And they said that their work with us, we're so honored. They said, we're going back through all of our work and realizing that we have not been thinking about substance use as a self-harm. And of course it is. So there's so many ways for collaboration and alignment and to just get people. I mean, these people are brilliant. They're all over the country. They run clubs in high schools. Chris speaks publicly and he's an amazing speaker. And there's an opportunity. We were talking with the folks at Shriners and they told us, we're completely rethinking. We have not been thinking about self-injury. We deal with burns, etc. But your mission has made us rethink what we're doing. And of course, we're like, can you help us get funding? Like, it's great that we've inspired you, but don't take off without us. And this is what we study. We are intensely in this little tiny piece of the pie. So that's kind of tricky, but also it's exciting because we, more than anything, we want to get this information out. We offered our first continuing ed unit, which was awesome and also humbling.
Can you tell us more about that? What was the context of that?
So we were invited that's when we were up in Vermont recently, the England and New York Collegiate Health Associates. So that was quite an amazing group. We had a table. We do table work, but we had a 2-hour presentation, and we were just kind of expressing, we talked a little bit about our origin story, and then we created scenarios and how would you deal with this? And it was super interesting because we'd just been to the mental health first aid, and we had been in a group with this woman. We had just been reading all this information about suicide prevention, and that, like self-injury, that actually you should say something. You just have to know how to lead with compassion. And the old sort of basic understanding was like, oh, don't say it because you're just going to make them do it. And the reality is, if a person has a plan to take their life, they've got a plan. They know about it. You're not putting a thought in their head. And this woman in our group, even though the presenter was excellent, made it super clear, there was a wonderful chapter that made it clear, gave us the beginnings of the language. This woman in our group's like, no, I just feel like I would make it worse, and that I would cause them to take that step. And so in the world of self-injury, it's sort of fascinating because, like, one thing, if you get too far, a little further into the conversation, is to say, at that moment, this is what you thought was the right idea, and that's okay. You didn't take the further step, right? This is non-suicidal self-injury. And even that compassionate understanding is, shows that person that you understand. And same, with suicide prevention work, which is interesting. So we're very honored to get to work with the Herron Project. It's really exciting. Does somebody have a hand up?
Yeah, Brindley's got her hand up.
Yeah, because I spend time working with LGBTQ advocacy missions, and there's a lot of conversation around safe space and what it means to be a safe space. I'm curious how you figure out to know when you tell a parent, when you tell a life partner, when you share that, or when the safe space is saying, I can be your safe space. I'm not gonna tell this other person in your life. I'm gonna help you if you want to talk about it. Because I know a lot of times that's part of the thing with children is worrying about the environment at home, and the reaction that could come from learning about it. And so I'm interested in that aspect of understanding how to be an advocate, a safe space as well.
Yeah, and I would defer to the therapists that we're advised constantly by therapists, and I think we will have more literature out about that. I think just being a safe person is the first part of it, and it is different with age brackets because you almost have an obligation, depending on your role, to express that. But then it's also, you're right, discerning, are they safe at home? In which case, is their nurse or their therapist or their doctor the safe person? And I think that's part of it is part of the discernment process. But if they're engaged in a self-injurious, it is one step away. This is non-suicidal self-injury, but it is one step away. So you do have sort of an obligation, and it depends what your role is. Like if you're a teacher, if you're a coach, and I think that stuff will become more evident. I don't know. It's not a very satisfying answer, and I also feel like it's important that. Oh, that's funny. That's my kid. Sorry, I'm turning her off. She knew we were talking about her. No, it's we're gonna get better at this, and I think that just saying to them, you're safe with me, and I want you to know, I think this is something we should talk to somebody who's, and referring them. And that's part of mental health first aid, is also knowing, your limits and staying in your lane. And that actually part of the work in mental health first aid is connecting them to somebody who is more skilled in this arena.
Mhm.
But again,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Brittany, if that's not super satisfying, but
No, it's great because I just sometimes I'm sure other people might ask the same questions in their head that I'm asking. So it was more about helping to get that comment out there than anything else.
yeah, and I will say that, the work that you're doing, especially with our LGBTQIA community, they are suffering, and that many engage in self-injurious behavior, because the world is a lot right now.
Yeah, it's so scary. And I've as the parent of two kids and remembering what it was, my own journey of whether or not I felt, which adults I felt safe to talk to myself as a child.
Mhm.
I remember, now regularly tell my children, if you have a friend who needs help, I can be that adult no matter what. If you're out somewhere in the middle of the night and it's 2 o'clock in the morning and people have been doing something that they shouldn't be doing and you need help, you can call me no matter what. And so I do think that conversation around how to be a safe person is so huge.
And we absolutely plan. It's just we're doing many things right now, but one thing I really want to get to is creating a small journal, like a little pamphlet, something to give to parents when you notice your kid is in distress.
Oh,
What
yeah.
are the first things you do, and what are the things you don't do? And the first chapter actually has to be, your own oxygen mask, your own self-care, because what you see is they jump in and they over rescue and they overreact, and you have to actually be a safe person, and you have to be safe. You also have to have your own sense of well-being, your own identity, your own boundaries, and that's somewhere in our near future. Cindy, did you have a question?
Yeah. So just, I think it would be good to clarify, and for me, but maybe also for others, that um, some self-injury is trying to be suicidal and some is just like, can you kind of talk that through? And then
Yeah.
my other question is, you said at the beginning that you had all these things you wanted to tell us. And I know you have a list in front of you, and I want to make sure you get to the end of all the things you wanted to share with us about what's been happening since April.
Sure. I think I've given you the sweep of it,
Okay.
but thank you for looking out for that. Sorry, what was the first part of your tell me your
About suicide.
yeah, so um what arena, the area in which we work, is actually better termed NSSI, so non-suicidal self-injury.
Mhm.
Self-injury that is used as a form of a coping mechanism.
Okay.
And that, of course, can be replaced with better coping, healthier coping mechanisms. And there's lots of them. Probably many of us have these boundaries or these ways that we kind of steady ourselves that we don't know to call, this is my 10 things of, coping mechanisms I employ. Sorry, I'm just going to turn this up.
If I could interject, Cindy, I might be misinterpreting what your question was, but NSSI, non-suicidal self-injury. So, okay, I'm injuring myself, I'm cutting, I have no intention of committing suicide. I'm getting other immediate relief by what I'm doing, and I'm ending up with these scars. That's one thing.
Yep.
There may also be, I don't want to be grim here, but aborted or failed suicidal attempts that leave physical injury.
Correct.
Is that part of your work as well? It produces a scar, but it comes from a different place than NSSI.
And we don't in our work, we don't judge the scar. We do ask people to attest to, because we can't take on everything. Like if you've had a knee replacement, that is a form of a trauma, right? But that's not the work. That's not the heart of the work we're doing. So
right.
There's definitely, and we,
Okay.
we call it, it's self-injury, but we're in this realm of non-suicidal self-injury.
Okay.
But if people come to us with a scar that is, as you've said, a failed next step.
Yeah. Call it failed,
as long as they're working with the therapist. So we require that people come to us now through their therapist.
Yeah.
So we were very concerned from the beginning that we not be a bad Band-Aid, and that people come in and have this delusion that just because their skin feels better, looks better, that now they're all better. I do think that there is something pretty astonishing that happens neurologically to a person as that revision happens. But it is, you must be working with an expert, a therapist, a trained professional who has helped you. Like by the time they get to the bridge, that's what we consider ourselves, they've already done the work to develop healthy coping mechanisms, because scar revision will make it worse as it gets better. It's a laser. Yeah. So it makes it worse. And then they go away for 4 weeks and the skin kind of heals, and they go back and they do another treatment. And we say it's typically 4 to 6 treatments that our providers are willing to do. And it's really about the second or third that you see a big change in the skin. We've had mothers who are like, I don't see any difference, but my kid's delighted. And we say, okay, so they know themselves. And if they think there's improvement, because what we think that is the beginning of hope sparking up, that they're like, well, I haven't marked myself for life. I haven't screwed myself up, because many folks stay trapped and they're like, you know what? I can't get a job. If my job interview is in the middle of the summer and it's like 100 degrees out, I still have to wear a long sleeve because I can't show, I don't want people to think I'm going to be in charge of the kindergarten class. And so there's so much that's attached to it, but yeah.
Thank you for clarifying that. Alan, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, hi, thanks. I was just wondering, knowing that middle-aged men right now and older, the number one disease is isolation. And I'm just wondering if you have any stats or thoughts on, is that age group self-harming?
It's actually,
Because I also know that's the age group and demographic that's most prevalent to die by suicide.
yeah. I think wasn't Elizabeth just talking about that age group, that they're doing a study on that as we speak? Actually, it was a great question. They're looking into it because they're seeing more and more self-injurious behavior in males above a certain age group.
Who was they, Kathy, that you were saying is working on this?
Elizabeth Lloyd Richardson, she's the one that we were talking about who's on our board,
Uh-huh.
has done a lot of the research about self-injury.
Hmm. Are there gender or age differences in methods of self-injury? I mean, I think the thing we're probably all most familiar with is cutting, and
Yeah.
with
So,
various.
so there are so many methods, but I think in that age bracket, I mean, it's called self-harm, and you're right. It is right close to one step from an attempt on life.
Hmm.
And that age bracket is very vulnerable and being studied now. And we also know that our young men, and particularly young white men, feel very isolated. And there's a lot of, I mean, we don't study that in particular, but I have two young men who I'm fortunate because they seem to be doing very well in their life, but there is a lot of isolation that's connected to technology. So it'll be interesting to see as we move forward if we come back from that. But where you're the gaming, where you're not interacting and you're out and really having connection, but you're choosing to be at home, that's going to be a very interesting field of study, and those folks deserve those studies to happen as well. But the sense of isolation and loneliness, I mean, we hear that all over the place in all the age brackets, how important connection is. And there was, of course, that great study that our former Surgeon General Vivek Murthy put out. That's what's at the heart of this is isolation, loneliness, and the fact that we need to grow new skill to meet the needs of a period in time that I think none of us could have predicted where we are societally right now. But I also feel like I want to be in that place of hope and active hope because it's just too awful to be in this space of fear and not know how to move forward. So, for us, and for me, I can say the selfish part of this is that this work came to me at a time that I was despairing. I was afraid for my kid. I had no clue what the holy hell had just happened because for a long period of time, we had lived in this beautiful place of raising kids and feeling like we were doing a pretty good job. And then this thing happened that we didn't know about. She didn't feel like she could share it with us until 2 years later when she was in a recovery site. And it just felt like all of a sudden the land gave way, and we were just in this slide, and it affects the family. um it's not just that person who's suffering, obviously, and we know that in all of our lives, right? And the tragedies that befall all of us. But it's an excellent question, Alan, and I know that we'll continue to learn more. I don't think those stats are in yet on that age bracket, but obviously.
Yeah, I in my work as a coach know, and as a man, know all too well the self-harm we're inflicting on each other that's not visible
Yeah.
happens up here,
Yes.
which is part of the isolation and wanting to do it alone, not ask for help, all that. But I'm imagining there has to be plenty, and I was affected by I lost a friend to suicide last year. I mean, it's just tragic. I know that's not where you're at, but yeah, I mean, you're doing great work. I'm not,
Oh no, we don't think you're adding to it, but it is
all part of it.
all tangentially related.
Yeah, it is.
And it
Yep.
speaks to like how do we recover as a society? And it's again, our default must be compassionate, must be connection. Part of the other world that I belong to, where Cindy and I work together, and Sally has worked with us as well, is Sound and Spirit. And that's it's just a local community choir, but it's more than that because
Yep.
it's where connection happens. And
Right.
the arts allow you self-expression, but they also give you this community. It's like the Cheers norm effect where you come in and people are glad to see you. And if
Well,
you're not there, they notice. And
that's what Coffee with a Purpose is another
There
community,
you go.
another place to connect, or and
Mhm.
so yeah. And are you aware of Lost Teen Metro West?
Lost teen.
Loss, LOSS,
Mm-mm.
which I'm not going to remember the acronym,
Yeah.
but it has to do with suicide survival. They're based right in downtown Framingham.
Oh, we would love an introduction if you can do.
Yep. Yeah, I'll figure that out. And yeah, they're doing great work. They have a hotline that there could be some synergy there with, they may just be, it's mainly based on suicide, but they're really good. They've really helped me a lot.
Mm.
Um, so
I suspect the stats, which you don't hear a lot on suicide, because suicide, again, like self-injury, is a social contagion. I suspect those numbers
uh,
are very bad right now.
oh, they're high, yeah, and yeah, their work and the work of
Sorry.
there's an association for suicide prevention that
Mm.
they're actually changing the name because it's not right. It's like death by suicide or death by um, it's really the disease is mainly depression, and the method is, then people die of suicide, not getting away from the stigma of suicide.
Right. And
As you are, you are doing the same work with
Yeah.
self-harm, physical harm. So it's all aligned.
Yeah. Yeah. All related.
Yeah.
Um, so I know Cindy, as part of her question, was kind of calling back to your introductory remarks, Kate, where you were alluding to, the things you wanted to tell us about, maybe like, what's coming up in the next 3 to 6 months. You know, what haven't we talked about yet that you want to, what news do you want to share with us?
so we're just out there still making connections,
Mhm.
um, because we just want to keep refining what we offer and offering those connection points, and infusing, goodness to to a topic that is really hard to talk about. Suicide is hard to talk about. We've got to be able to talk about hard things. And how do you talk about those things in a space of hope? And that has been essential for me. Like, how do I carry this thing and not give into the fear? And when we were interviewed and she gave that beautiful, like, that her thing was that people are generous and they want to help. Mine was that one of the tricky things that I've come to understand, at least about myself, is that, that idea that fear and hope can't exist in the same place. Lies. No, it's lies for me. That fear is, I can't motivate myself in a space of fear. Sometimes I think that moves people forward, but I also found that hope was very painful for me. And it's something that I continue to wrestle with, because my hope has been dashed. And I live in a space that's very scary. I live in a space with a kid who, you go into remission, or you go into this place where you think you've developed better skills, and yet there is still that that tendency, or that training that you've slipped into, and this is how I deal when the big things come, and there's no protecting ourselves from the hard things in life. But I'm grateful that our name came to us way before we had ever intended to create a new news, a nonprofit. But when we left, and my daughter's first appointment with that very generous Elizabeth Glenn, who did the first revision, she said, I feel like I saw a little something new in your kid's eye when, she left today. I feel like I saw a little spark of hope. And that stayed with us. And that's what that's, I guess it's just it's, me sort of packaging this up in a nice way for me to carry. But how do we get ourselves to a space of hope
Mhm.
when we're talking about such hard things? And that's not
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
neither here nor there, but I feel grateful that we believe that we are about the business of hope.
I want to call attention to a comment that Sally just put in the chat. Certainly your own introduction into this experience, Kate, was through your interaction with your own child. Sally's pointing out how important and useful this information is to grandparents, which is yet another
Another
um,
trusted adult.
relationship. And, it's when you start seeing troubling signs in a grandchild, what do you do? That's a
Yeah.
whole nother level.
You're another layer of love and hope and support. And that's a very special relationship for sure.
Yeah, yeah. Cindy?
Yeah, this, Kate, what you're saying, I guess here's a little more injection of hope is, so I was born in 1960, and I actually recently heard somebody talking about brain illness instead of mental health. And it it was on the radio. I can't remember, but it sort of changed the way I was listening to a program about uh, um, manic depression, or the one that goes back and forth, or any other illness. And she was talking about her son, and she can say that her son has a brain illness. And when I think back to when I was young, if you had a problem in school, you went to see the counselor, and nobody really, like, it was stigmatized. In my own little head, it was like, oh, you have a problem. That's what. And this country has come such a long way since the 60s in
Mm.
terms of talking about mental health, um, the whole LGBTQIA. Like, I was hearing a program yesterday, and the fear of the neighborhood when these women moved in, um, that they were going to make all the other kids become gay, lesbian. We have come such a long way in this country, and so we're at the
Miles to
beginning
go.
of this path of the self-injury, and I think the country is learning as a whole, to, as time goes by, to be able to absorb this new information and to be compassionate and to respond in more in ways that are helpful and not hurtful.
Mm.
So that's kind of, when you take the long view, I think you're on a good path. I
Yeah.
wanted to share that with you.
Thank you. I agree. It's just about skill building, and compassion is like it. You go to the gym to build your biceps. Same thing with compassion, and just getting a few. It's really, to me, it's just a few words. And instead of, I find with my kid, I try not to speak in superlatives, and I try not to over cheerlead. I usually now just say, "Wow, good for you. How does that make you feel?" And I immediately just try to shift it back, not to she doesn't need my approval. She need this, the biggest issue for most everyone is this basic sense of self-worth. Are you proud of yourself? Do you feel like, wow, like, good job showing up? I use that from our yoga teacher. Good job showing up. Sometimes I say that and we hear that in our yoga class. But I will tell you that the biggest mountain that we have to climb right now is the funding. So we have been at this for 3.5 years, self-funded.
Almost four now.
Almost four. And if it's gonna succeed, and it will continue, but it might, like, is it only gonna be like this big? Just Massachusetts and New Hampshire, people get to feel hope or spark, and that's where we are open to anybody's thoughts. We're sending out an annual appeal. I took a course this summer, summer-long course with Philanthropy MA on how to write a great annual appeal. I think it's a good one. I don't think our friends are going to be the ones to fund this,
Yeah.
but any connection anybody can make, we will go anywhere, talk to anyone. But the funding is the biggest mountain we have to climb, and we have to climb that mountain while we're doing all this other stuff. But until we have more than just the two of us, we have to kind of just keep creeping it along. But it's, we do our other work in the in between. Kathy takes all of her clients, on some on Wednesdays and over the weekend. We need to be able to kind of put food on the table. We don't need to get super wealthy, but we do need to hire a few more Kates and a few more Kathys. Cindy.
Yeah. Have you done any radio interviews?
So we just got interviewed. We have a woman who's writing a book about scars who, in her research, found us. That was fantastic. We have just been interviewed by the BU magazine. We have our lawyers now got a connection to the BC magazine, so we've had that. We were invited to a podcast,
but we don't
that
know.
I think we've just said no to. But there will be opportunities. We're open to. I feel like this would be a really interesting thing if anybody has connections to, how Chronicle does little interviews, or I don't know, like
Oh, yeah.
it's
Well,
nice to
you know
watch the
that
news,
show
something positive.
Embodied? The show Embodied, Sunday nights on either GBH or BUR.
Okay.
That would be perfect because it's about the body. And there, yeah.
Well, if you have any connections, the warm.
I don't have any connections, but
Cindy, go find a connection and hand.
What are you,
Alan had a question.
what are the funds needed for?
She's an accountant, so she should maybe talk about this.
So funding so that we can hire some people to help us actually with the programming that we're running. Also, for the marketing piece, the materials that we put out.
No,
yeah,
that's not what I want to know, because that won't move me to donate or make the connection I could make. Not that it's going to be a ton of money, but given what you have, I think it'll be comparatively a ton of money. But what's the end result of the money? Like, where does it go? Like, I know Lost Team uses it to fund the phone bank that they have, and they do programs. They provide support. They have a training for police departments so that when the officers go to a home where a suicide occurred, they know how to be with the people. I think they also sometimes accompany the police officers to the home. So that's like the specific stuff I want to know. Like the person with the scars, how do you help them?
So well, there's so many, and there's several years of phasing into that, but so that to me speaks to like the prevention, the materials, the resources that we can offer, the forums that we can create for therapists to be talking to other therapists who have more skill, for the scar vision providers everywhere to become more skilled in their practice. Most dermatology offices can do this work, even if they don't have the super duper laser. So getting people more skilled. I want to get into schools. I want to get to parents, so I can create that little book, journal, whatever it's going to be, that allows parents, when their kid's suffering, whether it is self-injury specifically, but just to have like a compassionate response and to, caretake themselves, but also grow in a little bit more skill for their child. It requires us to go across the country, going to the Society for the Dermatology Nurse Practitioners. It requires us to go to Sweden. So the specifics will come, but we also, we're literally creating the bricks, putting the bricks in place so that we can launch in that direction.
Alan, if it's okay with you too, maybe either you could put your email in the chat, or else you must be in our purpose email list or something.
I am.
If you wanted to connect directly with Kate, that sounds like there might be some very interesting future conversation. But
sure. No, and we learn something everywhere.
Very nice. Thank you.
But I will tell you that one stat that kind of really sort of takes my breath away is that in this country alone, just the US, and we get reach outs from other countries, because this is a global issue, not just an issue in the United States, but there, according to the 2023 census, so that's the most recent information, that in this country alone, if we're just talking about the youth, and of course it's not just youth, but between the ages of 14 and 22, this was the stat that was available, in this country, there are 48 million young people, ages 14 to 22. So if we just take 30% of that number, and it could be higher, that's about 14 million people who are currently engaging in self-injury. So how do we not only revise scars, but also how do we get folks away from using this particular method as their coping mechanism? Well, we got to infuse better coping mechanisms into the system, and that, that's the preventions, that part that really excites me. And that's through parenting classes. We work with the Resilience Project at Newton Wellesley. They go into different towns, and they educate from the little kids up, trying to get better coping mechanisms, better healthy parenting. But people are anxious. Kids across the board are anxious. Their parents are anxious. How do we become less anxious? And I don't know, everything we see on the TV, all of the technology, like it would seem the world is anxiety inducing. But when you actually step back and you connect and you go to rehearsal on Wednesday night, you're surrounded by beautiful, amazing people. So that is hopeful to me, that actually my neighbors are amazing. They would look out for me. They would look out for my kid. The world is actually a really good, hopeful place. But it doesn't seem that way.
Yeah. Well, thanks to people like the two of you, you are sparking hope. When's the conference in Sweden, and what was the name of that organization again?
So the easiest, if you think ISSS, and they are called, their short name, which is not easy, is the ISSS.com. ISSS.org. So the full unsexy name is the International Society for the Study of Self-Injury.
Okay.
Which, explains what they do.
Yeah. And when is that conference that you're trying to get to?
That is June 25th and June 26th. Yeah.
Next year. Okay. Well, I want to thank you again. I know our group is started small and dwindled a little bit, but I think it's been a pretty powerful discussion. And with the recording, hopefully it will reach others as well. Good old Brinley just put that link out there. I think I probably said this the first time you were here, but right off the bat, what impresses me is, everybody deals with struggles in their lives, and some of the worst are the ones that their children are facing. And it's a hard enough task to figure out how to deal with it in your own personal space. But for you to go beyond that and say, well, it's not just our experience, but it's thousands of lives of people, experiencing this. So let's see what we can do to improve that. Man, kudos in capital letters. That's you're doing great work. So.
Well, it's a beautiful mission. We feel very lucky, and I feel super lucky that she's come along. She didn't have to, but she has two kids, and she's had experiences for her children who their friends have engaged in self-injury. So,
and it's scary when you're seeing it, it's very scary to see it.
Yeah, definitely. I'm thinking back to a comment that Brinley made earlier this morning, where she repeats the message with her own children. If they, come across their friends, that Brinley, says, I can be that safe parent. It doesn't have to be just to my own family. So, yeah, we're all a community for each other.
We must be safety to each other, and also lift each other up. Like when you hear of something, we are constantly telling, like when we've gone to mental health first aid, then we tell everybody, you have to go to mental health first aid, because we found that so empowering.
Yes.
And it's this is how we do it. We
Yes.
just hear about good things, and we try to educate ourselves and other people. And if people are doing good things, we should also be applauding that. And that's where the Herron project was so interesting, because they said that they've tried to collaborate with other groups who said, nope, you'll steal our funding. And I mean, we have to get funding. We don't want to do that. We want to get this information out there. So Cindy.
Yeah. Thank you for talking about the mental health first aid. I just did the wilderness first aid class 2 days, and this is inspiring to do that. And this is kind of a selfish question, but if either of you have any suggestions for future speakers for Coffee with a Purpose, given your longevity in Natick, we're always looking for interesting people. And Natick is full of interesting and cool people. So let Doug know if you have any suggestions.
Thank you for that plug, Cindy. I'm always looking for folks.
Yeah, and I'll tell you that I don't know who's running it in town, but I know that there are two people. Maybe it's in Natick 180. Well, the Spark Kindness people will know, or Natick 180 will know about the two people who are trained with mental health first aid in Natick. We could give you the name of the woman. So Woburn is doing lots of good stuff.
Okay.
They felt they were behind, whereas I feel like Natick were really like leaning forward. But apparently there are two people in our community who do that training. So maybe they would be. That is my number one new thing. I'm like, oh my gosh, we all have to get mental health first aid. And I feel like we belong to that.
And I think it's in Natick 180, you said, right?
I think it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. So we'll think about that.
Thank you. I mean, we have artists and illustrators and singers and
we have quite a wide variety of folks.
All kinds of people, writers, whatever.
Yeah. Which seems like a good segue just to mention next week's speaker. And of course, I also want to mention or give the floor to Brinley or anyone else for other announcements of things going on in town. But you'll see our speaker next week is a representative from the LGBTQ Asylum Task Force. Their work focuses on immigrants to this country, specifically fleeing countries where the LGBTQ lifestyle is illegal. And of course, all immigrants are having huge challenges these days, but this mission focuses on that particular segment. This fellow came to presented to our church a couple of months ago, and I thought his message and importance of his organization was good and could be shared with this group. So we'll see him next week. Brinley, what's going on in town that we need to know about other than getting ready to eat turkey?
Well, I don't know that there's an enormous amount this week because it's a short week for everybody. But tonight is a school committee meeting, and again, they are talking about potential Johnson property needs that the school needs that the Johnson property could meet. So if you're interested in that or being a part of that conversation, that is tonight during the school committee. And then mostly what I would love to share today is more of an activism thing. I know we as a Coffee with a Purpose community talk a lot about climate and sustainability and being green. And I put a link in the to the Metro West Daily News in the chat today about Massachusetts Bill H 4744, which has to do with energy affordability, clean power, and economic competitiveness is what they call it. But it's really not a great bill. And if anybody is interested in calling Linsky and our rep and saying, hey, we think you should oppose this bill, I think it's a really strong idea. If anybody wants more information, they're welcome to reach out to me now, and I'm happy to give some more, or I can try to put a few more in the chat, but I think it's extremely timely. So again, if you want to look at that Metro West Daily News story that I put in there, or just Google the bill, H. 4744, Massachusetts House bill, it'll come up right away and you can see what's up for it. And I am very opposed to it. And I think it would be good to call Linsky and tell him that.
Okay. Thanks for that heads up. Cindy, you want to say something as well?
Yeah, I have the opinion page of the Metro West Daily News from yesterday right here, and I was going to mention that letter to the editor. On the same page, there's a column called "Patience is Key to Navigating Your Loved One's Dementia," and it sort of reminded me of our discussion last week, and I just I guess I could send a link or something. Then the other one is affordable housing leads to better educational outcomes. And there's a bill, I guess it's federal funds for helping fund children when their parents lose the lease on the rent or can't, have to move to be able to have bus to the same school they were at. Because every time families move, it really affects children's education. And there's clear statistics that show the graduation rates just fall about a third for when children are being disrupted in their lives. So I'm not sure how fast I could put the links up before we stop. But,
well, it's okay. I mean, it's also
the thing that I took away from the story about dementia was the interview with family before somebody enters a new like an institution where they're going to be taking care of this person, is to find out, what kind of things the person likes to wear, what kind, are there things the person really likes to hear, like if somebody doesn't like being called honey, we'll stop doing that. Or if they don't like wearing plaid, we will always lay out the blue polo shirt, or what, just things. They say that a person becomes more who they are, which I've heard that before, but in very small ways. That the things that they really like, they're going to still like. The things that they really don't like, they're going to not like still. I thought that was interesting.
Cool. Yeah. Thanks for that. Okay. Well, I think we're
So I did.
Oh, go ahead.
I just wanted to say I did put so Green Newton does a really good job of explaining why we should be against that bill. And so if anybody wants to look at that link real quick that I just put in the bottom of the chat before we go away, that gives a better explanation than I did.
That sounds good. Yeah, and pretty much most of these links are all we'll get into the video description so people can access them there. And Kate and Kathy also, I've had the AI summary feature on. So for what it's worth, once that gets produced, that'll be a summary of our discussion this morning as well. So again, I'm going to turn the recording off at this point. Thanks you so much, everybody, for joining, and enjoy the Thanksgiving week and holiday, and we will see you in December.